Okay, awesome. So I want to give you guys a little background on why I decided that net sheets were the topic for today. And we're not going to spend too much time on it because I do want to have our open forum at the end for you guys to ask questions. However, with the forbearances and just the economic climate that we're in right now, we need to have a very clear understanding of our seller's financial situation prior to closing. And as you guys know, for those of you that have been tuning in with me every week, you know that sometimes I come with a topic because of something that has been repeating itself during the week, challenges that the agents are running into, or something that's been a major challenge for one agent that I want to prevent you guys from running into yourself. We want to learn from each other and from what's happening out there in the market. We have a situation right now that we are working through where a seller that is our client did not tell the truth to our agent about being in a forbearance situation and having not paid their mortgage for a long time prior to the forbearance going into place. So on our listing agreement, there is a section towards the end where the buyers have to, the sellers have to acknowledge whether or not they are current on their payments, whether they have any liens on the property for taxes, whether they have filed for bankruptcy or plan to file for bankruptcy. All of these things are very important because if they answer the question that they're late on payments, or if they file for bankruptcy, something like that, it could stop us from being able to list the property for them. So I look at those when I'm looking at your listing agreements to make sure that the answers are such that we can continue to move forward. So the seller misrepresented themselves to our agent on what the status was of their mortgage. So the home goes on the market, they get a contract, everything's fine, moving forward, closing's supposed to be today. On Monday, the final settlement statement is distributed to all parties. And the seller sees that they have to bring $10,000 to the table. And the seller thought somehow in their head that they were going to be walking away with money. And they weren't. So now they've decided they're not going to close. And we can't force a seller to go to closing. The only thing that we could have done was to have copies of the settlement of the mortgage statements, to do this seller net sheet up front to see if there was a red flag that would have told us that there is something else going on that the client isn't telling us. Now, what I will also say is that doing these net sheets is super helpful when you're at the listing appointment to just talk about pricing in general so that your client is prepared when offers come in. Not every market is like what we've experienced in the last 6 months. And not every market allows for you to put a property on at a certain list price and then get offers above, right? Sometimes you put it on at a certain price and there might be a seller subsidy. So the net to the seller might be less than what your list price is. And so these net sheets allow for you to have the discussion up front with your client of, if you sell for this price, these are the fees that you pay. This is your payoff amount on your mortgage. This is what you would net and walk away with. So it is helpful to us to know, because of the market we're in, about these forbearances and late fees and things like that, to know what our seller's true financial situation is. And it's a tool for us in our appointments, in our discussions with our sellers, so that they know up front, okay, if offers come in at X price, I'm comfortable accepting that. They don't have to think about it. right? When all the offers come in, they already know I can take an offer at that price because I already know what my net is. We also have discussions with sellers where they think their house is worth a certain amount of money, right? I have to sell for 800,000 because whatever, it's in their head, or they think, they think something, right? It really is more about the money that ends up in their pocket in the end than what that sale price is. So if we are able to do that net sheet for them to show them how much money they walk away with, if that's what they're looking for, is how much they're comfortable walking away with, then it really doesn't matter what that sale price is, right? As long as they're comfortable with that net that they walk away with. So it's just another tool for your tool belt that will help you on those appointments, help you show your value with your sellers, with the clients that you're talking to, and it will help you, because of the climate that we're in right now with possible forbearances and possible late payments and missed payments out there, to really know what's happening. Also, something to know is that if you have a seller who's also then going to buy, if they have a forbearance, that could affect their ability to buy something else. And so that's something to be aware of also. If they say they're selling and they want to buy something, but they have a COVID forbearance, there might be a challenge there, because it depends on how the lender is treating the forbearance, how it looks to apply for something else. So before I get into the actual document itself of the net sheet, what questions do you guys have for me about the theory of the net sheet, or anything that I just talked about for you guys? How many of you have been using the net sheet as a tool that have been in business? Okay, a couple of you. Okay, awesome. That's good. And when you are doing the net sheet, are you doing it with just one price or multiple prices? Just one price? Okay, awesome. The document that I'm going to show you that we're going to work on is, it's an Excel spreadsheet. It's based off of the NVAR document, which gives multiple columns on there for you so that you can compare the different prices. The NVAR document does not automatically calculate for you in DocuSign, so I use the spreadsheet. If anyone wants the spreadsheet, I'm happy to share it with you guys. There's nothing, there's nothing secret about any of the documents that I use and show you guys. They're tools. So if you think that it would be better than what you've been using, feel free. There's lots of places where you can get net sheets. Bright. You can even log into Bright and do a net sheet. I have never used it. I've played around with it. I'm a spreadsheet girl, so I like my spreadsheet. I like my formulas, but just use something that works, right? It's a matter of having a tool that works. Okay, Amy, your hand is raised. Do you have a question, or were you just saying that you use the net sheet?
Sorry, that was from net sheet. I apologize.
Shannon, I have a question.
Yes, Chris.
So how have you used the UT net sheet tool?
I have not.
Okay, I was just wanting to know your opinion because it wasn't really accurate based on when they were going to move in and all that. So I just wanted to see if anyone had the same experience.
Yeah, and so some of the automated ones, like on Bright or on UT, they're good for, and actually UT's, I thought was for the buyer side. I don't know if it was for the seller side. I thought it was a buyer's estimate of cost.
They have it for the sellers too.
They do? Okay. So I'm not sure on some of those that I haven't used, whether you can actually pick the move-in date or the sale date, but I'll show you how on how I calculate like your prorates and things like that, so that you can put those in if the tool that you're using allows you to choose the date.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so I am going to share my screen with you guys. All right, can you see my screen? I can't see you guys to see whether you can see. Okay, perfect, awesome. And just remember, let me know if, just unmute if you can, because when I share my screen, I can't always see you in the chat. So this is the spreadsheet that I use. So for those of you that have used the NVAR document, it's very similar. It has a list of basic fees that are attached to the sale side and the estimated amount that's due to the seller. There's places for the signatures. There's caveats on the FHA loan payoffs that you calculate it with the whole month. When you're doing this net sheet, it is super important, especially for right now, for why we're having this discussion, to make sure that you have their mortgage statement. And I'm going to show you how to read the mortgage statement in just a minute. If you don't have the mortgage statement, please do not fill anything in to the section that says estimated payoff, because you don't want to get caught in a situation where you've estimated based on what they've told you and you've typed it in. If you leave it blank, you can let them fill in whatever they want to, because you're going to send this to them as a PDF. Even though it's a spreadsheet, you're not going to send it to them as a spreadsheet. You'll save it as a PDF to send to them. And they can run their own numbers. I highly, highly, highly suggest before you ever give this out that you get that mortgage statement, because then you're going to be able to give a more accurate estimate. Now, I always estimate a little high on things because I'd like them to be pleasantly surprised. And I'm almost always within like $1,000 of how much they get on the Alta statement, because there's a formula for everything, right? It's not, this isn't left to chance once you know what the mortgage information is, okay? All right, awesome. So here, we start with the sale price. So on this one, when I was talking to my clients, I had done my listing appointment first with them. And when I had done the listing appointment with them, we talked about the, I saw the home, we talked about the services that I provide, what they were looking for, et cetera, et cetera. I looked at the comps. We talked about a range of pricing, where we thought it could go on the market. And then you put in, I tell them, I say, we're going to have an opportunity to talk about some different pricing. And when I have your mortgage statement, I'm going to send you this cost sheet so that you can see what the different prices are and where you would end up as far as your net. So here, what I would do if this was a market that was a little softer than today, so like where we might be paying closing costs for someone, I would put in the first column where I really want them to list. That's the one that I put first. So let's say 650,000 is really where I want them to list. And then I'll put something that is a stretch. Like if I think that they want to stretch it a little, I'm going to put the stretch. And then I'm going to put in there that if they had to pay closing costs on behalf of the buyer, because at the stretch, the buyer's probably going to ask for closing costs. So I'm going to type in their closing costs credit back to the buyer. And then on the last one, I'm going to put in where we want to list, where I want them to list with the lower price, okay? I always want to aim to give them the worst case scenario so that they're pleasantly surprised when it sells for higher, okay? Now, what this does is this calculates where I have formulas in the spreadsheet, it's automatically calculating certain fees. Certain fees are not based on percentages of the sale price. So you can see where if I change this price, let's say I changed it to $640 and took out the 0, you can see this top line stayed the same, but the next line changed because it's a percentage of the sale price. So it doesn't matter what you put in here, certain fees are stagnant, they stay the same, certain ones are a percentage of the sale price. So closing fees, preparation of the deed, settlement fee, release, courier fees, etc. $875 is the estimate I use. This is based roughly on UT's fees that are on our ABA. UT is not the most expensive, right, in the area. I have seen companies that charge a lot more, but I'm using what our partner charges, okay, which is, it's a good average. The next section is your grantor's tax and your congestion relief tax. Any of my friends on here from Fredericksburg, you don't have the congestion relief tax and the WMATA tax. You're lucky. You don't have to worry about that additional fee on your net sheets. That's for us in Northern Virginia. The grantor's tax is $1 per $1,000 of the sale price. The congestion relief tax is now increased. It's $2. It had been $1.50. On our ALTA statements, I just want to point out that you will actually see these two charges broken out into 4 lines on your ALTA statements. You will see the grantor's tax broken out into 2 lines that are basically 50 cents each. One that is state related and one's county related, and same thing with the congestion relief and WMATA. You're going to see one line that's at $1 and another line that's $1. So there'll actually be 4 lines. Okay, but for the purposes of here, one's grantor's tax, one's the congestion relief and WMATA tax, so we can lump it together. And it is a percentage of the sale price. Now we come down to lender charges. So I don't know whether or not this is going to be an FHA or a VA loan or conventional financing or cash. I don't know. There are certain charges that may go to the seller for these types of loans. Now, I will tell you, very rarely is the seller going to have to pay these fees on behalf of the buyer. However, like I said before, I always want to estimate high on their costs so that they're pleasantly surprised when we get to the closing table. So I always put in here $600. Usually it is related to a second appraisal that has to be done to verify the value, where this would come in, okay? And it looks like my spreadsheet does not have the formula correct, so there we go. Termite inspection. Termite inspection, I use Pest Now. I think they're $35, so I put that in here. Fix that formula. The last column I noticed earlier was not calculating, so I'll make sure that that's all in there correct before you guys get this copy from me. I'm going to skip the property taxes and come back to it in a minute. HOA docs. Depends on how much the HOA documents cost. If you know the neighborhood where the property is and you know how much they cost, put in the cost that you know. I know these cost, I think, $275. So I put that in, it calculates it all the way across. It's not a condo, so there's no condo fees. The brokerage fees, how much do you charge? Listing broker fee, 2.5%. Selling broker fee, that's the buyer side, 2.5%. Put those in there. If you're charging more, just change this over here. If you're doing 3 and 3, you can change it. And again, it's a percentage of the sale price. So as long as my formulas are working properly, it's going to calculate that for you. Home warranty. We've talked on ask the broker about home warranties. If you guys want to talk about it again later, after we finish this little exercise, ask me, why is it important for the seller to offer a home warranty? The price can be anything really based on the services that are added. $500 is the estimate that I use. Home inspection repairs. Do you want to put in here a budget for home inspection repairs based on the type of market we're in? If we're in a softer market where the buyers are able to negotiate home inspection with right to negotiate or void, I'm going to say put some home inspection repair money in here just in case, right? You're going to know the condition of the property that you're listing. You're going to know whether there might be something that comes up or not. So let's just put $1,500 in here just for the sake of something. All right. Now we're getting down to the payoffs. Let's leave that for last. I'm going to talk to you about the property taxes for a minute. In most of our jurisdictions, property taxes are paid twice a year. They are paid on June 1st and December 1st. So what we do here is we take the property taxes, divide by 12, right, to come up with the monthly amount of the taxes. So in this case, I have the taxes open, I believe. For them here, this is the other net sheet that I did for them. So their taxes I had at $488.83. So let's go back. All right, did that work? I know sometimes when I change screens, are you guys back on the spreadsheet with me? Are you guys? I'm just looking for, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, so we're going to use $488.83 as their taxes. Okay, so where I would have gone to get that would be the tax record in Bright. I pull that up, look for the annual taxes, and then divide by 12. Okay, and that's going to give me the monthly tax amount. And I may have that up. Here we go. Can you guys see this tax record? No, it didn't go to the tax.
No.
Okay, I'm gonna reshare so you guys can see the tax record. Okay, now you guys see the tax record?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the tax record. This is basically the same copy of what I have you guys put into command when you guys submit your compliance documents. So what I did, is come in and I look right here for the assessment and the tax information. So this is also where you would see if there are any special assessments. If this is in a town, an incorporated town, so like the city of Falls Church, the town of Vienna, town of Herndon, Manassas Park, maybe, like there's some areas that have additional tax. In Loudoun County, Purcellville has an additional tax. The town of Leesburg has an additional tax. You'll see it here. So you'll want to calculate the total tax, not just the county tax. So let's look at, this one says 5957. So this is the updated, this is 2021. So let's see if it's, I think I was using the 2020 because this was a sale that happened earlier this year. So 5957 divided by 12. Okay, 496.42 is what we're going to use. So I'm going to stop sharing and then we're going to go back to the cost sheet. Okay, and we're going to do, did I say 496.42? We'll just go with that. Okay, 496.42. Now I don't have any formulas in here because of the way I have it set up. It depends on how many months we're going to go with. We're in July right now. Okay. So if I was going to talk to these sellers and work on this net sheet, we're going to talk about when do you want to go on the market and how long do I think it's going to take to sell? When's the estimated closing date going to be? And I'm going to talk about how many months of taxes I think they're going to have to pay at closing. So the first 6 months of the year would have already been paid because we're in July. So they would have already paid the first 6 months out of their escrow because I'm verifying with them that they have an escrow account. Most of our clients right now have an escrow account that was set up. Okay, so their taxes are being paid out of their escrow account. So now we're in July. If these clients want to go on the market in August, then I'm going to say their closing is going to be right around October 1st, based on what our market is doing right now. Okay, this is like a 30-day close for our market right now. So that means that their escrow account would not be dispersing their taxes because the taxes aren't due again until December 1st. So they're actually not dispersing the taxes for the second half until November. Okay. July, August, September is then going to show up as being due at closing if they're closing on October 1st. So I have to calculate that they're paying 3 months of taxes at the closing table because their escrow account has not paid anything. So I'm going to go here to calculator and I am going to calculate 496.42 times the 3 months that I think, July, August, and September, that they're going to have to pay at closing. And that's going to be $1,489.26. Okay, and then I'm just going to carry that over. Okay, does everybody understand how I calculated those taxes? When you're talking to your clients, make sure that they understand they're going to get that money back. They just have to pay it up front because the money's in their escrow account. They're going to get that money back. When do they get that money back? By law, it has to be returned to them within 30 days of the payoff getting to the mortgage company. So 30 days is the maximum amount of time that the bank has to process that escrow account and close it out from when they receive the payoff. So it's not going to be forever. And it's usually this amount plus about 2 months that they're going to get back. So whatever they've had to pay up front at the closing table, plus about 2 months, because the escrow is allowed to hold a buffer. So you can tell them, don't worry, you're going to get this money back. Now we're going to get to how do we read the mortgage statement. So let me stop sharing so I can pull that mortgage statement up for you, because this part is something that I want to make sure you guys know how to calculate. Okay, can everybody see the mortgage statement? This is the mortgage statement for these clients. Now let's just pretend that this is the current mortgage statement. All right, pretend that this is the statement for July. What we're looking for on the statement is to see what the payment is that's due. If they break down the principal, interest, and escrow payment, that's awesome. Sometimes they don't. A lot of times they do. So that's going to be very helpful to us. There's also going to be some sort of principal balance that is listed somewhere. This statement is very detailed and also tells us what their escrow balance is. Many of the mortgage statements lately don't show what the escrow balance is. You get that on the payoff statement when it's ordered, but this is great because it actually talks about the escrow balance. So important things to note on here. You want to look at the amount due. Does the amount due equal 1 month's payment, or are they past due? In their transaction activity, when was their last payment made? So are they paying on time? There's going to be some things that are listed on here that are going to be clues for you. So as I'm looking at this, suspense balance. Well, suspense balance to me means How much is in forbearance? How much are they holding? What are they not paying, right? What did they kind of set aside? It says 0. That's good, right? My clients are paying on time. There's nothing strange about this at all that is a red flag to me. So then how do I put this on my net sheet? Well, there's 2 things I'm looking for. I want the principal balance. So in this case, it's 469,987.18. That's the principal balance. And I want the interest amount for the month. If the mortgage statement does not break it down like this and just gives you the total, then go ahead and use the total. Because remember, it's better to estimate high than to estimate on the low side, and then they have to bring more to the table. So this says the interest up here portion of their mortgage payment is $930.18. Okay, everybody with me so far? All right, so now, so that I can make sure that, I hate this stop share, start share thing, but I want to make sure that you guys can get with me to each document. So now what we're going to do is put in the estimated payoff first trust balance. Okay, so this is not actually the payoff amount. This is the first trust balance from their statement. So this was the 469,987.18. They don't have a second trust. If they did, you would put that in here. So just for the sake of discussion, you could just, if it's $50,000, you would just put $50,000 and it would calculate it, okay? The estimated payment then up top, you would have to add both payments together if there's a first and second trust. Now you can do this one of 2 ways. I'm gonna suggest that you do it the easy way. Don't make this hard for yourself. Right here above that first trust balance, you're gonna put that full month of mortgage payment interest, 930.18. Just put the full amount. Remember, estimate high. And then when they get to the closing table and they walk away with more money, you're wonderful. Okay, estimate high. When it's calculated for the actual date of settlement, what's going to happen is they're going to take this amount, divide by 30 to get the daily rate, and then multiply it into whatever day, right? So if they're closing on the 15th, right, then it's going to be divided by 30 times 15. Okay, everybody with me on that? Don't make it difficult for yourself. Just put the full amount. Interest is paid in arrears, meaning the mortgage payment that is made on August 1st is actually paying the interest that was accrued in July. That's why when all of your buyers go to closing on July 16th, they don't make a mortgage payment until September 1st because they're paying July's interest up front at closing, and then they haven't accrued August interest yet, but on September 1st, they've accrued the interest. And so when they make that payment on September 1st, they're paying the interest for August. So now we have everything filled in as best we can on that seller net sheet. And we have 3 different prices and 3 different options for how much money our seller can walk away with. $139,358, $151,034, or $129,889 at these prices. Questions?
I have a question about the taxes. If
Yes.
it's Prince William or Fairfax, is the tax rate the same for all of them? Okay.
It is. Good question.
Shannon, you mentioned something about on the statement that you don't always see the interest broken down. and that you could just use the whole amount. Can you show me what you mean by that?
Yeah, so sometimes it'll just say that the total amount due, like on that one was $2,600, the principal, interest, and escrow payment. So just use that $2,600.
Okay, instead of just the interest part.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome. So now one other tip I'm going to give you to know whether there's a forbearance or additional liens on the property that you have not been told about, because it's even happened to me with people that were friends who I sold a house a while ago. They didn't tell me they had a second trust. And so everything I kept talking to them about was based on the net sheet and how much money that they were getting based on, you know, the pricing we talked about. And I couldn't put my finger on why it wasn't okay. The amount of money that they were walking away with, you know, it wasn't adding up. Well, it turns out they had a second trust. And so that balance had to be paid off. And so they weren't telling me that in their calculations, that was coming out of the proceeds. So when I'm saying you're walking away with $75,000, I didn't know they were really walking away with $20,000 because they had the second trust. So once you have the listing agreement signed, our partners at UT will do a preliminary title search for you. And they will tell you whether or not there are additional liens on the property that you don't know about, because they can pull it right up on the computer. Okay, so that's my suggestion, is that if you feel that your seller is not forthcoming, or there's some spidey sense, there's something, or you just want to make it part of your process, that on all of your listings, you are going to have UT do that initial search for you, do it, because it'll save you heartburn later.
I have a question on that. So would the UT, if they are doing the preliminary search, would it show a forbearance?
It probably would not show a forbearance. The mortgage statement is what you would need for that. It would just show who the lien holders were. So if there was a second lien that they weren't telling us about, it would tell us, hey, go ask for that second mortgage statement.
Okay.
Would it also show if they have a HELOC?
Yes, that would be the second lien. So yes, it would show you if they had a HELOC. All right, so did anyone learn anything in that activity this morning?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, it's time for any questions that you have, net sheet or otherwise.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I had a recent scenario that my sellers didn't tell me that they owed taxes, a couple of years of taxes. And on the listing agreement, no one had mentioned that to me. And I go through it verbatim. So I got a phone call from the title company saying, hey, we have a problem. There's a lot of money owed in taxes to the IRS. So on this sheet, on the net sheet, is there a place if the sellers tell you that they owe taxes? I think often they don't really know exactly how much they owe, because you have to call the IRS and get the payoff, final pay, or whatever it's called. But if a seller knew that, where would you put it?
So I would say you could change, like where it says home inspection repairs, you could change that to say, you know, IRS payoff. You can change any of those that you're not using. If it's not in an HOA or a condo, you could change the condo line to say the IRS payoff. Any of those you could change to show. On the NVAR sheet, I think there might be a line that just is other fees or other charges. It's a lot longer of a sheet. So if you're using that, there's a place that you could just put it randomly.
Thank you.
I like mine to be shorter.
Shannon, I have a question for you. We talked earlier this week about some private haddock closing where in my buyer agreement, I have a certain amount as the minimum that I have set as my compensation for buyers. But working with VA buyers, if you are going to closing and you don't discuss things in advance about your commission and say the commission on the other side that is offered to the buyer agent is lower, VA buyers aren't able to pay that and some other fees. And you mentioned there's a way to deal with that on the front end before you ever go tour the house. Can you talk a little bit about how to handle that?
Yes, absolutely. So Amy and I had talked about this earlier in the week, and I asked her to bring it up today because I wanted to remind everyone to be aware of that while VA buyers can pay certain things for the seller, like the transfer taxes, right? The congestion relief tax, the VA buyers can give a credit to the seller for those things, but they can't pay their own commission, right? So there are some challenges there. We have to get creative if there's a seller who's not offering commission, right? We run into FSBOs, we run into some of these limited service where they're offering $500 or $5 or $1 just so that they can place it in the MLS. So the catch that we run into is that sometimes we don't know until after the showing that there hasn't been commission offered that matches what our buyer agency agreement is. If we've already shown the property, we as agents cannot negotiate the commission. So we have to make sure that we're not showing homes based on the commission. But if we have a VA buyer, we just maybe need to be aware so that we can call ahead of time, talk to the agent, talk to the seller if it's a FSBO, find out what their intention is. In a case where it is a VA buyer who can't pay the commission on their own. If it is something that we've already shown the property or a different circumstance, there isn't anything that prohibits a buyer from negotiating the commission to be paid on their behalf because the buyer has entered into the agreement saying that there will be commission paid, but then they've chosen to use VA financing and they can't actually pay that on their side of the settlement statement. So if you run into this scenario, be aware of it, come to me or, come to Drew, come to your coach, let us help you to write that offer so that you don't get in trouble with it looking like it's an ethics violation, that you are trying to negotiate commission after you've shown the property, and that it's the buyer negotiating that it's being paid on behalf of the buyer per their agency agreement, right? And this can be done in a couple of different ways. If we think it's going to appraise, then you increase the sale price and you ask for a seller credit, right? To pay the seller credit, to pay for it so that it doesn't cost the seller anything, right? On that net sheet, right? They're probably looking at not paying any buyer commission. So you increase the price, the net to them is still the same, essentially. There's a few things that are calculated based on the sale price, but in general, it's not going to affect very much for them. You can certainly negotiate that the buyer pays the transfer taxes, right? And then the seller pays the commission, right? So you can negotiate the contract in a way that it's a win-win. It just has to be written in a way, and the conversation has to happen in time for it to work out. Once the contract is ratified, there's no going back. What's offered in the MLS is what we have to accept.
So best practices then, you mentioned one, talking to the agent before you go show the property, and then you also mentioned coming to talk to you once something's ratified. So you're saying that we should do both of those things? And if so, what's the conversation that we should have on the front end with the listing agent before we go see the property?
Yeah, so it's talking to me before it's ratified while the offer is being made. Once it's ratified, there's nothing we can do. Right. The conversation before it's shown is simply, hi, whoever, I have a VA buyer who's very interested in your property, and we noticed that there isn't any commission being offered and they are not able to pay as VA buyers. How, if it's the seller you're talking to, it's, Mr. Seller, how are you willing to pay buyer agent commission, even though it's not listed in, the listing. The other thing is if it's an agent, right, and they're offering $500, then you ask the agent, what is the seller's plan in this scenario, to be able to have our buyer who's VA financed come see the property.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
I have a question on VA loans too. I've had a VA buyer, and we were kind of just talking, and this one property is still very competitive. I mean, they've already gotten a couple offers. They had an offer deadline and everything, but they still wanted to use their VA loan. And then she said something about, certain rights that she can waive. And I'm like thinking to myself, what are those rights? So are there certain rights that they can waive?
I guess I might need more information on what rights she's talking about. I mean, the biggest thing with VA buyers right now is when it comes to the notice to value from the appraisal, that is not something that can be waived. Now, the buyers can certainly pay the difference if it doesn't appraise. There's nothing that prohibits a VA buyer from paying the difference from a low appraisal and the sale price they agreed to. However, they cannot waive their right to walk away if it appraises low. So I'm not sure what she would mean, but if you get more information from her about what she's referring to, let me know and I'll see if I can help.
All right, thank you.
Shannon, I have a quick question about VA buyers. I mean, it's not quite related to that, but so my VA buyer is the only one on the loan, and his wife is going to be on the deed, right? So we already ratified the contract, and then now I have to fill out the addendum cell. And we were going to ask you, what should I write on the addendum?
So an addendum where you're adding a buyer is very easy. Yeah, very simple. It's just writing that buyer and seller agree that blank name is now added as purchaser to the agreement ratified on whatever date, and that's it.
Okay, that's perfect.
Everybody signs, including the buyer that's being added.
Okay, yeah. Everybody means like the seller also has to sign.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because the contract is ratified already.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay.
Absolutely.
Shannon, I have a question going back to the seller net sheet discussion.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think definitely it's a best practice to have the mortgage statement, right? But I think a lot of times when you're going to a listing presentation, I mean, people aren't going to give you that right away because they haven't decided whether they want to work with you or not. And in that case, I mean, most of my clients, they want to see the numbers up front, right? So are you bringing like an estimate and then you do something a little more detailed once they sign, or what's sort of your philosophy on that?
So I don't ever give the net sheet at the listing presentation. I offer that I will give it to them because when I go on that listing appointment, I've never been in the house. I have an idea of where I think the house would list based on, information I've gotten from them when I've scheduled the appointment and the research that I've done prior to showing up. And then once I get in the house, then I'm pretty sure I know where it's going to land. However, I don't want to give them everything when I go. I'm there to listen to them when I go. I'm not there to give them anything. I'm just there to listen. Most of the time when I go on a listing presentation, I'm taking a notebook with me. I don't actually take anything else. I take a notebook and I just take notes. I just listen to them. I'm not going to tell them all of the wonderful things about, Keller Williams or me or this or that. I just want to hear what they need and learn about the house and those types of things. We talk a little bit about, what's happening in the neighborhood, where they need to go, whatever. But I offer that net sheet to them. I tell them I have this tool and I will provide it to you. All you need to do is send me your mortgage statement. I'm going to plug it in for you, those things. And I've never had an issue.
Interesting. I guess it's different for me because most of my clients are not here and they're like, hey, can you go check out my house? What do you think about it? What do you think you could list it for? Right. And so them selling is based on the fact that is it going to be the price that they think it's going to be? And if it's not, then they're like really not interested. Right. So I think it's a little bit of a different scenario. Like I'm not going in and sitting down with the clients at that first meeting. I'm usually looking at the house, giving my opinion at that point. Right. So, but I think what you were saying is still, true. Like, well, I can better get this net sheet for you if you send me that, right?
Well, remember in that conversation, I think that a lot of sellers have an idea in their head of the price they have to get based on some random number as a sale price instead of really wanting to focus on the net price to them. And so if the sale price doesn't matter, it's the net price that matters. And so if you have their payoff information, then you can have a real conversation with them. It doesn't matter if the sale price is 200 or 300,000 if they're not going to walk away with the amount of money that they need, right? They think they're going to walk away with. And most sellers don't understand what the fees are and the cost structure associated with selling a home. They're not going to know that, I mean, even if they have sold recently, that the taxes, the WMATA and congestion relief just went up from 150 to 2, right? Like they don't know these little things. And so you're going to know that. And they also might have in their head that it's much more expensive to sell than it actually is. So when you put it on paper and you show them what they're going to walk away with, they don't care what the sale price is. It's just like how we talk to them when they get an offer in, right? It's not about the sale price, it's about the net to you.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Shannon, I have a question, if I have.
Yes, Radu.
Hi. The question is actually about the land and the soil analysis.
Okay.
So if the soil analysis allows for a 2-bedroom house to be built, but the house that is sold is a 3-bedroom house, is that a problem?
Well, it could be because it depends on how the appraiser looks at it. So we always, when we're selling homes, especially that are on well and septic, we're always looking at what the septic perks for that reason, because we want to make sure that the value is there. And if the home cannot actually be sold or valued at what the county is allowing, what that soil test shows it can be built for, then the value really isn't there. So I do think that it can be a bit of a problem.
Is it fixable or you can't fix it?
Well, it depends. It depends on why it's coming in at a certain number, right? So sometimes it depends on how big the drain field is. It depends on where the property is. It depends on zoning. It depends on a lot of different reasons, especially if it's a to-be-built house, if it's land you're looking at. When the home is already built and it's on septic, if the drain field in the area is big enough to be expanded, then it might not be a problem because then the purchaser can expand the system to make it fit the physical structure of the house. So it really just depends on what's determining why it's coming back at 2 instead of 3.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Shannon, that reminds me, during your listing class for part of the boot camp, you talk about that it's important to include in the listing agreement, what the septic is approved for, how many bedrooms. And I was wondering, where is it, or is there a way besides just asking the seller that we can verify that number when they tell us how many bedrooms are approved for the septic? Because I didn't see it on the tax record, so I don't know. Is it county records you pull it from, or how do I verify that, or should I even be verifying that?
Yeah, sometimes some counties it will show up in the tax record, and the county health department is not health department like you think of, like going to check restaurants and stuff, but they will have all the records. And yes, you should, in the listing agreement, it does ask for the number of bedrooms that it perks for. And so that absolutely should be filled in. And the copy of the permit and approval should be obtained on a listing because the buyer should ask for it. And so if we get it on the listing side, then at least we have it.
Okay, so that's something we should be asking the seller for then as part of just the listing. Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, it's a good practice. It's 12 o'clock. I will stay and answer any more questions you guys have, but if you don't have any more, then you can go eat lunch.
Shannon, do we email you if we want the spreadsheet?
Yes, actually, if everybody that was on today, because I recorded, if everybody that was on, I'll just send it to.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and then if you don't want it, just delete it. But I'll pull back up the recording and I will see who was on here and be able to get it to you guys, because I think that I think it'll be helpful for you moving forward. And even if you don't use it all the time, at least it's going to be something that you can have to be able to use and just be familiar with what the costs are that are associated with the closing. So awesome. All right, guys. Well, if you
Thank
need
you,
me,
Shannon.
yeah, no problem. If you need me the rest of the day, I will be here with this, of course. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the day and a great weekend.
Thank you, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon, this is Veronica. If you see on the Zoom, the galaxy, this is me, it's Veronica.
Ah, okay. That's your secret name.